Hello there again, I'm Austin Archer, and welcome to my channel and another episode of The Thing. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I don't really know what I'm doing with the format. There's a lot to say. Let's just begin. By now, I'm sure there's no way you aren't aware of the cultural juggernaut that is Christopher Nolan's film adaptation of Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. The film is on track to make over $1 billion at the global box office and is currently being discussed, memed, and pulled apart on every corner of the internet. But I can't help but notice a strange and stark disconnect between the conversations I'm seeing online and what the metrics and data from the critical aggregators and my own anecdotal experience in reality are showing me. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a staggering 97% audience approval rating with over 10,000 verified reviews to go with an undeniably strong 94% approval rating from critics, making this Nolan's best reviewed film ever on that platform. Better than Oppenheimer, better than Memento, better than The Dark Knight. If you look at Letterboxd, it's got an average rating of 4.4 stars, which is incredibly high for that platform, and beats out other fan favorites from 2026 like Obsession, Backrooms, and Project Hail Mary. IMDb has the film with an 8.5 out of 10 with about 270,000 verified responses there. Metacritic, notorious for being one of the toughest aggregators for films, has it at a critical 88 must-see score. The audience score on Metacritic is probably the lowest you'll see on any platform, but also the amount of contributors is significantly smaller than most audience aggregators on other platforms. Anecdotally, what I can tell you is that every single person I've spoken to in real life who saw the film loved it and was incredibly moved by its themes and epic set pieces. I haven't spoken to one single person in real life who hated it, and that's very rare for me. Even for films that everyone seems to love, I always have at least one friend or one family member who thinks the movie sucks or is mid, but everyone I talk to about The Odyssey has nothing bad to say. So here's where we get to the disconnect. On one hand, it seems like this film is being met with near universal praise and acclaim, but anytime I try to talk about this film online, my comments are flooded with almost unanimously negative feedback. I made a short form video talking about a line of dialogue I really loved from the film, and for a week straight, thousands of comments poured in to tell me how stupid and wrong I was and how much the movie sucked, telling me to stop glazing Nolan and go watch more movies and read more books, and it was like every single comment. There were no comments that agreed with me. Anytime I post to a text-based platform like Threads or Twitter about the film, I'm met with the same overwhelming disapproval and disdain in the comments. So what's actually going on here? How can all of the critical aggregators say one thing so definitively and almost every single person in my comments proclaim the exact opposite? How is the disconnect this stark and pronounced? How does every person I speak to face in real life seem to love the film while every single account in my comments thinks it's absolute trash? Is this just more evidence of the dead internet theory? Are these all just bots? Or is it maybe a socio-political psyop? Or perhaps a consequence of the literary crisis? Or I don't know, maybe it's just a really loud minority who is very intent on crafting an identity around being part of the few who see through Nolan's overhyped bullshit. I don't know what the fuck is going on, to be perfectly honest, but let's take a look at the receipts and, see what we find. So really quick, before I get into the online responses I've been collecting, I just want to make it clear, in case it wasn't already, where I stand on the whole thing. I think the movie is a masterpiece, not because I'm a brainwashed film bro who's just glazing Nolan for street cred with the other film bros on Reddit, but because if this isn't a cinematic masterpiece, I genuinely don't know what is. In my humble, subjective opinion, this film will age exceptionally well and will be remembered as one of Nolan's best and one of the best sword and sandal epics to ever grace the silver screen. Not only is this film a towering achievement in every technical category of filmmaking, from the writing, the acting, the original score, the production design, lighting, sound design, editing, and cinematography, it's also a very refreshing and much needed repudiation of generative AI and a hearty battle cry for handcrafted, human-made art in a moment where that kind of thing is genuinely being threatened with extinction. It's a love letter to the tradition of oral storytelling, people entertaining and enlightening other people through the art of thematic myth-making. For more of my general critical analysis and in-depth thoughts on the film, you can check out my discussion over on my other channel, The Oner, where I break down a different film each week with my friend Kramer England. You can find that channel and that video linked in the description. Okay, let's begin. So, what's going on here? Where's all the hate coming from? Well, a lot of the online backlash started months before the film ever screened for a public audience. There was, unfortunately, and also, of course, the painfully predictable response from bigots on the right to the announcement of the casting of actors like Lupita Nyong'o and Elliot Page. Just grossly, overtly misogynistic and racist chuds from across the magosphere flooding our feeds in droves to declare that Nolan had gone full Netflix by casting Lupita as Helen of Detroit and using AI-generated images of her that don't actually represent what she looks like in the film or in real life. Like, seriously, racists are so fucking goofy. Racism will actually have the ugliest men you've ever seen in your life out here in public pretending like this isn't one of the most mind-bogglingly beautiful people on the face of the earth just so they can push a stupid agenda. And it's so boring and transparent and bad faith. And then, of course, there was the non-stop screeching about Elliot Page playing Achilles, the greatest warrior in all of antiquity, except Page was never cast to play Achilles. He never said he was. Achilles isn't even a character in the fucking movie. Page actually plays a soldier named Sinon, who is kind of the runt of Odysseus's army from Ithaca. But being factually incorrect didn't stop the bigots from dead-naming Page every chance they got and referring to him as a woman in all of their posts on the internet because, you know, they're the fucking worst. Bigots are a bunch of intellectually lazy, boring, uninteresting people with no depth and no desire to even appear vaguely intelligent. God, I really fucking hate conservatives. So maybe the online backlash in comment sections is an identity politics-based, socio-political psyop from the right wing trying to poison the well on public opinion regarding the film in an attempt to disparage the inclusive, progressive casting. I don't know. I don't fucking know. It seems a little far-fetched, but then again, like, does it? Outside of the right-wing hate mob, there was also a fairly loud group that decided the film was going to be bad once the first trailer dropped, citing that the dialogue sounded too modern, and therefore would most likely make for a bad movie. From the jump, this criticism perplexed me. The two lines most people seemed to be glomming onto from the trailer are the one moment where it appears Matt Damon's Odysseus is leading an army of men into battle by shouting, "Let's go! Let's go!" And the other was Tom Holland's use of the word dad.
My dad is coming home.
I won't lie, these lines definitely stood out to me the first time I watched the trailer. I definitely noticed them and had the initial thought that they felt slightly out of place, but I didn't linger on the thought for long. I mean, I figured Nolan had done more than enough to earn my trust, and I'd just wait to make up my mind after seeing the film. But it seems that many fans just couldn't let it go. In fact, the inclusion of the word dad is still the primary grievance I'm seeing from so many people in my comments, and I mean just so so many people. Just a whole lot of people who could not get over the inclusion of this one word. Just one single syllable, 3-letter solitary word. They just could not imagine enjoying a film that used that word for some reason. Not only did I find this to be a wildly petty and pedantic grievance to have with a 3-hour epic, but the more I thought about it and looked into it, the more I found the argument to be completely devoid of any actual substance. Formal and informal words for the patriarchal parent figure, i.e. father and dad respectively, have always existed throughout the history of known human languages, and as far as we can tell, the original Greek recitations of the Odyssey contained words for both the informal and formal versions of father or dad. There's just simply no historically or linguistically relevant reason why the word dad would be inappropriate in a modern adaptation. I think a lot of film criticism in the age of the internet comes down to the gap between expectation and execution. When we watch a film where all of the characters are dressed like this, we expect them to speak like this.
You wrote to me once, listing the 4 chief virtues: wisdom, justice, fortitude, and temperance.
And, of course, we expect them to sound like that. That's how they should sound. After all, Gladiator takes place in ancient Rome. Obviously, everyone would be speaking in elevated 20th century English in fake British accents, because that's historically accurate. No, but seriously, I don't think we actually think about this enough. So many people told me that they couldn't get past the modern sounding words like dad and the American sounding accents in the trailer for the Odyssey. But when I asked them why an American accent isn't appropriate and which accent they would have preferred and why, they would never really respond. Or when they would respond, their responses would be kind of laughably silly. Because I think the truth is most people wanted to hear a British accent, but if you think about it for even 1 second, you realize how stupid that actually is. There's no reason why a fake British accent is any more historically accurate than a fake American one. Having the actors all speak in some performative version of the Queen's English is every bit as arbitrary a choice as having the entire thing be performed in Jamaican accents or French accents. We are talking about an adaptation of a modern translation of a form of ancient Greek that is over 3,000 years old. Think about how much the English language has changed since the time of Shakespeare. Think about how different that form of English is from 21st century prose or poetry. Shakespeare's plays happened 400 years ago. Homer's stories originated 3,200 years ago, 8 times longer than the span of time between now and Shakespeare. Hell, just think about how much the English language has changed in your lifetime. 10 years ago, if you told me your friend rizzed up a baddie and almost got to crack, but then fumbled the bag when a looks-maxing frat king frame-mogged him, I would have no idea what the fuck you were talking about. I barely understand it now. The fact of the matter is, saying, "My father will return to reclaim his rightful seat on the throne," is honestly no closer to the original ancient Greek than saying, "My dad is coming home." Nolan made a deliberate choice to have Holland use the more familiar dad instead of father because it has a more emotional and familiar connotation. He's trying to show that the son of Odysseus craves a closeness with an absent father figure he was never allowed to really know. Calling him dad makes him feel a closeness that he longs for but can't really have. Calling him father is more removed and cold and makes that absent father figure feel that much further away. You are entitled to your own opinions, especially when it comes to something as subjective as art, but you are not entitled to your own facts. You can feel like the word dad said in an American accent sounds out of place in a Homeric epic, but that feeling isn't actually based in any linguistic or historical reality. It's based on an expectation you've been conditioned to have by modern cinema. You see people in armor swinging swords, you expect British accents, whether that makes fact-based sense or not. This is actually a thing. There's a whole field of study around this exact thing. It's called the Tiffany problem or the Tiffany effect, and I'm just going to read to you the summary of the Tiffany problem from the Wikipedia page because it's pretty solid. It just says, the Tiffany problem or Tiffany effect refers to the issue where a historical or realistic fact seems anachronistic or unrealistic to modern audiences of historical fiction, despite being accurate. This often occurs with names, terms, or practices that, although historically accurate, feel out of place because of modern associations. So this idea, the Tiffany problem, started when one particular scholar of English literature discovered that the name Tiffany has roots that go all the way back to the year 1200 and was initially being used and spelled Tiffany as early as 1600. But if I were to write a movie that took place in the 1600s and the main character's name was Tiffany, you would all say, you're a bad writer for that. That's bad writing. Nobody in 1650 was named Tiffany. Even though you are historically incorrect and that it is like factually you're incorrect, you just feel like, nah, that's not right. And that's all that's going on here is you feel like someone in 3,200 years ago, ancient Greece, shouldn't be saying the word dad or the word mom, but that's just a feeling and it's not actually based in any logical or factual reality. Let's move on. Speaking of not being entitled to your own facts, let's talk about the other line. Let's go! Yeah, that one. Everyone still complaining about this line is just showing that they haven't seen the film. If you only saw the trailer, you could be forgiven for assuming that this is a college frat boy-esque rallying cry Odysseus makes to lead his men into battle. Screaming out, "Let's go!" like a freshman who's 12 beers deep in the student section at the homecoming game. Let's go! But in context, it's actually the opposite. That's the army of the dead chasing Odysseus out of Hades. He isn't leading that army into battle. He's running away from them. He's not saying, let's go win this war. He's saying, let's get the fuckity fucking fuck all the way out of here. But you'd only know that if you actually watched the movie. So I noticed something weird. After the third straight day of accounts spamming the same comments on my video over and over and over, I started to look into who these people were, and I promise I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that almost every single account I clicked on looked exactly like this. A private account with an anonymous username, 0 posts, and often 0 or very few followers, and it was just this over and over and over and over again. Now, I'm not forming any conclusions here. I'm not declaring an official conspiracy theory. I'm just saying the optics feel very evocative of the dead internet theory. The idea that over half of all activity on the internet is non-human activity. That it's bots making friends with bots, riling up bots, fighting with bots, sharing memes with bots, and very little of what we actually see in the comments is reflective of real human sentiment. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that real people do have accounts that look like this. I know some people make sock puppet accounts or just prefer to be as anonymous and under the radar as possible in their online activities. I'm not saying that this is proof that every Odyssey hater in my comments is just part of an army of inhuman bots. I'm just telling you what I found when I went looking. Again, not forming any conclusions, just saying, when all of the critical aggregators are this overwhelmingly positive, but all of the online comments are this overwhelmingly negative, and all of the accounts doing the commenting look like some version of this, the vibes are sus, to say the very least. But even the people who we know are technically real human beings, people like Def Noodles, who has dedicated his life to hating on the film 24/7 nonstop as part of the right-wing reactionary anti-woke faction, these people seem to be proudly open about the fact that they have not seen the film and will not be seeing it anytime soon. Now, part of this is a protest. They decided to boycott the film long before it was ever released as a fuck you to woke Hollywood because nobody loves cancel culture more than butthurt conservative bigots. But it's just weird that they still behave as though their critiques of the film should still be taken seriously after so brazenly admitting that they haven't seen the film they're meant to be critiquing. None of these MAGA chuds have corrected their claim that Elliot Page is playing Achilles, even though they could just fucking look it up. They could just look on IMDb or look in their own comments or literally anywhere on the internet and find out that they're objectively wrong about that. Not only have they not corrected the claim, they seem to be actively doubling and tripling down on it. Because being brazenly and openly wrong is kind of part of the fun for them. Making people mad by being intentionally wrong is all part of the design of poisoning the cultural experience of the film. For every Def Noodles-esque right-wing slander piece about the film, there are thousands of right-leaning people who gobble up the slop and repeat it in other comment sections. And for every 1,000 or so of those, there's maybe one good faith audience member who starts to question the experience they had with the film. It starts at the top with blatant, overt, laughably bigoted lies, but the domino effect results in relatively good faith people going, well, maybe there was too much expositional dialogue. I'm pretty sure if someone says a piece of information instead of that information being revealed visually, that means a movie is automatically bad, right? Show don't tell. That's a rule. No, I've read that rule somewhere. And at this point, I know what you're thinking. Come on, man. Not everyone who disliked the film is a right-wing bigot, a bot, or an easily manipulated Nimrod. There are plenty of valid criticisms to be made. Emily Wilson, the world's foremost scholar on Homeric literature and the writer of the translation of the Odyssey that Nolan referenced for his adaptation, has come out with a scathing critique of the film. Are you seriously saying you know more than Emily Wilson? Well, no. But okay, listen. No, seriously, listen. No, I'm being serious right now. Put down your phone, stop typing your comment, pull your car over, stop doing the dishes, and just listen really closely for a second. I don't like that Emily Wilson chose to publish this scathing critique through the London Review of Books. I'm going to explain to you why I feel that way, but first I need you to hear this. Emily Wilson is widely regarded as one of the world's foremost living academic authorities on the topic of Homeric literature and the translation of ancient Greek texts. Her credentials and her scholarly work are not being questioned, minimized, or in any way denigrated here. My problem with what she did has absolutely nothing to do with the value of her work or the indisputable measure of her expertise. Emily Wilson is allowed to publish a scholarly critique of a film adaptation of a story she has built her life studying. Anyone, for that matter, is allowed to critique a film for any reason. Everyone is technically allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. Emily Wilson doesn't owe anyone anything. She doesn't have to shut up and be grateful. She is allowed to feel however she feels, and she is allowed to share her thoughts and opinions publicly if that's what she wants to do. Furthermore, my critique of Wilson's article has absolutely fuck all to do with her gender. Do not be so grotesquely reductive as to fall into the intellectually lazy trap that any man criticizing any woman for any reason is automatically the product of misogyny. Women are people, and some people do and say stupid things sometimes. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a woman. Nancy Mace is a woman. Caroline Leavitt is a woman. Candace Owens is a woman. I can criticize the behavior of these people without my criticism being tied in any way to my internal prejudice surrounding their gender. So that's the upfront caveat. Now, my issue is three-pronged. Number one, it is my subjective opinion that what Wilson did is simply in poor taste. I disagree with her behavior on the simple grounds that I think it lacks tact or any basic sense of common human kindness or reciprocal respect. Christopher Nolan, one of the world's most famous filmmakers, has wanted to make a big-budget film adaptation of The Odyssey for a very long time now. In fact, he was originally attached to direct the 2004 film Troy, which is an adaptation of The Iliad. In the process of writing his adaptation of The Odyssey, he publicly cited Wilson's translation of the story as his primary jumping-off point and source of inspiration for how he wanted to approach the dialogue in his screenplay. That does not mean he was trying to do a faithful, beat-for-beat, word-for-word adaptation of Wilson's translation, by the way. It just means that while writing his own adaptation with his own ideas and interpretations of the themes, he was inspired by her work. As the result of Nolan and the cast of the film all heaping public praise on Wilson's translation, sales for her book skyrocketed, earning her millions of dollars in book sales and drawing millions of new readers to her sphere of literary influence. To put it plainly, Christopher Nolan and the artists he worked with on his film did Emily Wilson a great kindness. They publicly showered her with well-earned praise and adoration and helped her expand her reach and her personal wealth in the process. They didn't owe her any acknowledgement or praise, but they offered it freely anyway because it seemed like the decent thing to do. In response, Emily Wilson chose to publicly tell the world that she thinks Christopher Nolan is an idiot who makes loud, obnoxious films for morons and who should be embarrassed of his lackluster skills as a screenwriter. Now hold on, I can already hear you typing your rebuttal. You're saying, so what? She's not allowed to have an opinion? Oh, a man gives a woman a compliment and now she owes him something? She hasn't earned the right to speak her mind? Stop. Stop what you're doing. Maybe just rewind the video and go back to the caveat at the top of this section. Rewatch that part until it sticks. Remember, I am not saying Emily Wilson is not allowed to have an opinion. I am not saying she owes Chris Nolan or any of the artists who worked on his film anything at all. I am not saying a compliment is a contract or in any way questioning Wilson's scholarly achievements. I am simply saying that I think Emily Wilson made a choice to behave like an asshole. And she didn't need to do that. She's allowed to do that. Anyone is allowed to do anything. If a stranger holds a door for you, pays for your groceries, donates to your GoFundMe, gives you a kidney, you don't have to say thank you. There's no law requiring you to show gratitude or to pay the kindness back in any way. You can respond however you want. Hell, you're technically allowed to spit in that stranger's face if you feel so inclined. I just don't know why the fuck you would do that. In my opinion, that's the kind of thing only a bitter, self-centered asshole would do. There's just such a thing as professional courtesy between esteemed colleagues. I'm reminded of this anecdote Jason Robert Brown shared once where he talked about going to see a workshop of a new Stephen Sondheim musical, and afterwards Sondheim approached him and said, "So what'd you think of the musical? And be honest, tell me the truth." And initially Jason Robert Brown was like, "It was great, man. Fantastic work. Congratulations. It's a triumph. You're a genius." And Sondheim pressed him and was like, "No, but really, tell me what you thought about the third act. Does it resolve well? I got problems with this song in the first act at the end of the, give me your actual feedback. I value your thoughts." And Jason Robert Brown said, "Okay, here's an opportunity to kind of be honest and offer some real, genuine feedback to this composer who I have so much respect for." And he gave him his honest critiques, and he said he watched Sondheim's face just sort of drop. And he went, "Okay, well, yeah, thanks for letting me know what you think." And he walked away, and Jason Robert Brown thought about it for weeks and was like, "You know what? I think the lesson is when a colleague comes up and asks you, what'd you think of the piece that I just did? That's just a person who's poured years of their life into making that thing. They're insecure about sharing it with the world. It's a really vulnerable thing to share art that you've worked really hard on with people. And really all I need to do in that situation is just say, 'It's great, man. You're brilliant. Great work. Fantastic job.' I don't actually need to tell him where I thought the weak spots were. That's just not necessary. All he needs is just support and encouragement." And I don't know. I feel like this is just a situation where a different choice could have been made. Typically, I don't like the whole reverse the roles tactic that conservatives like to use. The whole, "Oh, so the Little Mermaid can be black. What if Ryan Gosling played Black Panther?" It's usually a pretty stupid argument for stupid people who can't spot a blatantly obvious false equivalence when they see one. But this situation really is one where I feel like flipping the genders actually helps to see it more clearly. Imagine there's a literary scholar named Eric Wilson, and he's made the focus of his academic career writing scholarly dissertations on the works of C.S. Lewis. Now say Greta Gerwig cites Mr. Wilson as a major influence for her film adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia. Let's say he wrote a book analyzing the Narnia universe, and Gerwig cites that book as a major source of inspiration for her during the writing process of her screenplay adaptation. Now imagine that all of the actors in the Greta Gerwig Narnia film start to post pictures of themselves on social media, reading Eric Wilson's books and talking about how brilliant he is. As a natural result of all this free and far-reaching publicity, Eric Wilson's book sales start to skyrocket and he makes millions of dollars. Now flash forward, Gerwig's movie is in theaters and enjoying near universal acclaim. She's gonna win all the Oscars. Right-wing bigots are trying their best to trash the film simply on the grounds that a woman directed it and she hired too many black and queer people to work on it, but that's not stopping the film from being a massive hit. Now imagine Eric Wilson publishes a scholarly critique of the film where he constantly disparages Greta Gerwig personally and basically calls her a moron who has no business adapting the works of Lewis and is in way over her head. Be as honest and as serious as you possibly can. We'd all fucking hate that guy. Immediately, we'd feel like he's using his credentials as an excuse to publicly shit on an artist who went out of her way to publicly praise him and enrich him. We'd probably call him a raging misogynist prick who should just shut the fuck up and say thanks for all the sales and free press. And what's really interesting is Eric Wilson has every right to publish a scholarly critique. He has every right to dislike Gerwig's work. He can offer that valid, academically verified criticisms without ever straying into the realm of genuine misogyny. But just the mere fact that his critique will make the misogynists who are already attacking the film feel validated and emboldened is a huge problem. And that brings me to my second major issue with Wilson's article. Whether she intended to or not, Emily Wilson has emboldened and validated all of the right-wing bigots who wanted Nolan's Odyssey to fail simply because they thought it was too woke. And that's what I mean when I say a different choice could have and probably should have been made. Yes, Emily Wilson is allowed to do whatever she wants, but she also has the option to make a different choice. She has the option to look at the cultural conversation and the cultural landscape and go, you know, I didn't like the film, but I also don't like all of the unnecessary bigoted hate that actors like Lupita Nyong'o and Zendaya and Elliot Page are getting right now. She has the choice to say, in solidarity with them, I'm not going to do anything publicly that gives any ammo or any validation whatsoever to the likes of Michael Knowles and Andy Ngo and Ben Shapiro and fucking Deaf Noodles. But instead she was like, no, I hate the film. Christopher Nolan doesn't know ball. Keep my name out your fucking mouth.
That. I don't like people playing on my phone.
Girl, don't even trip. You bigger than that.
No, because I keeps it real like that.
And again, that's her right, but it just kind of sucks because right now, Deaf Noodles and all the other MAGA dipshit rage baiters are banging drums and doing backflips because in their minds, the world's foremost scholar on Homeric literature just co-signed their bigotry. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that's not what she actually literally did, but they don't care about that. They don't care about the substance of her critique. They just care that she agrees with them in the abstract. She agrees that the movie sucks, so they can now continue their campaign of open vitriolic racism and transphobia because Emily Wilson said so. Even though her critique has nothing to do with the casting of Elliot Page and Lupita Nyong'o, it matters that she has taken a side in the cultural conversation that emboldens the hate that is right now spewing out toward these actors and the marginalized communities they represent. Wilson could have simply said nothing. She could have just quietly let her colleagues and friends know that she doesn't really fuck with the film and enjoyed the knowledge that hordes of new readers are discovering her work as a byproduct of the film. But by choosing to come out against the film publicly, she is inadvertently coming out on the same team as those who are denigrating Page and Nyong'o for all the wrong reasons. She is giving their bigotry and their hatred a scholarly seal of approval. And again, I really can't stress enough that I'm not saying she isn't allowed to express her opinions or that I think she isn't qualified to offer a scholarly analysis. She obviously is. But that brings me to my third issue with what she did. The review she wrote is kind of dog shit. Like, it's just a bizarrely poor analysis from someone so smart. So much so that I wondered if it was even real when I first read it. I genuinely thought maybe someone had written it with AI just for the sake of making it look like the world of academia was siding with the anti-woke agenda. Wilson says Nolan's film has no gods, which is kind of blatantly, objectively, and obviously incorrect. Not only does Zendaya play an anthropomorphic iteration of the goddess Athena, but the hand of the gods is seen constantly throughout the film. There's an island of magical sea witches who sing a song that makes you want to kill yourself. There's a giant whirlpool monster, a giant monster with 6 legs, a race of giant people, and a 50-foot giant cyclops who is the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea. The sun god punishes Odysseus's men when they eat one of his cows. Poseidon punishes them when they blind his Cyclops offspring. Zeus punishes them for breaking his law about kindness to strangers. They go to Hades in this film, literal hell, and they talk to an army of undead soldiers. There's a witch who turns people into pigs. Wilson is acting like Nolan's adaptation stripped the Odyssey of any of its magic or fantastical elements, elements, but the film is just jam-packed with the stuff from the opening frames. It starts with a text that says, "A time of apparent magic," and then magic stuff is happening just non-stop for the entire run of the film. Look, I get that Nolan chose to not have Zeus or Poseidon represented as actual anthropomorphic characters in this story. I get that he chose to omit several elements from the original text, but that's also just a basic and often necessary aspect of adapting something. And Wilson bafflingly doesn't seem to understand this. She doesn't seem to get the really basic fact that almost any time a filmmaker is adapting a book for the screen, they're gonna have to leave some stuff out to make it work. Wilson's translation of the Odyssey is 592 pages long. The longest a screenplay ever gets is like 180 pages, and that's in a format where every page is like 50% empty space. Wilson writes as though her expectation is that the film should be at least 12 hours long, so as to incorporate every element of character and world building from the original text and to perfectly satisfy her very particular expectations. But Nolan is a filmmaker very much in control of his craft. He knows which aspects he wants to focus on for his interpretation of the material. He knows which parts to keep and which parts he's okay losing. He wants to present the gods in his film as a question to his audience. Are the gods real? Are the events of the film evidence of their presence, or are the gods just a way for the characters to try and make sense of the bewildering events they continue to witness? Are the gods a mythos to help them contextualize a strange and terrifying existence? At one point, Athena asks Odysseus directly, "When your men die, do you see fate or consequence?" She's asking him if he sees what is happening as the result of the will of the gods or as the natural consequence of his poor choices. This is a question Nolan wants his audience to wrestle with. When the lightning explodes and illuminates the hall where Odysseus slaughters the suitors in the third act, is that Zeus signaling his approval? Or is it just a conveniently timed thunderstorm? When the prophecy of Tiresias unfolds exactly as he revealed it to Odysseus in Hades, is that evidence of the divine order of the gods? Or is it more of a self-fulfilling kind of thing? Is Athena even really there? Or is she just a manifestation of Odysseus's tortured conscience? At any rate, it's just plainly stupid to pretend that this film adaptation is completely devoid of any magical or supernatural elements that could imply the literal existence and intervention of the old gods as depicted in the original poem. At one point in the essay, Wilson says that Nolan's Odysseus isn't a clever or interesting character. She says the film has nothing of depth to say on the toll of war, the suffering of the victims, and the lasting psychological effects on those who perpetrate the greatest atrocities of any war. And this really is just mind-boggling to me. She says Nolan's Odysseus isn't clever or cunning or interesting because Nolan omits details like Odysseus building his own bed, or the trick he plays on Polyphemus the Cyclops by telling him his name is No Man, so that when people ask him who blinded him, he'll say no man did it. But just because these aspects of the original tale are omitted doesn't mean we don't get a clear sense of the layers to the version of Odysseus Nolan wants to present us with. Nolan's Odysseus is the architect of the famous Trojan horse ruse, the inciting incident for the entire narrative. The fact that he was the only person on the beach of Troy who could come up with a plan like this to breach the impenetrable walls of the city of Troy has him labeled as the hero of the Trojan War. Nolan's Odysseus is a man who plucks his bow to alert his prey when he is hunting because he sees it as a matter of personal virtue and honor. He is a man who believes in treating strangers with kindness and respect even when you are engaging them in battle. When Antinous tries to switch lots with Sinon to avoid the war, Odysseus lies and tells Antinous' father that he was trying to take another boy's place so as to spare the father from the shame of having a coward for a son. While he doesn't trick the Cyclops with the no man ruse, he does turn back and fire a parting arrow without plucking his bow, showing that he is breaking his own moral code and depicting a man who is not yet ready to confront his own shortcomings as a leader. As far as the idea that the film has nothing of depth to say about the toll of war, nothing of depth to say about the victims, my God, the reveal of Zendaya's Athena being a Trojan woman who was executed in front of Odysseus during the siege of Troy is incredibly thematically powerful. The entire film is about the cost of war, how Odysseus is actually avoiding going home because he feels that he has lost his right to return home after violating his own moral code with the deception of the Trojan horse. Odysseus orchestrated a plan that involved attacking his enemies without alerting them of his presence, without plucking his bow. He broke his own moral code and the moral code of Zeus. He turned a gift and an offering to the gods into a slaughter, or as Nolan succinctly puts it in the film, he turned a fight into a hunt. And as a result, he feels like he cannot possibly return home because he is not the same man he was when he left. He is a worse man, a cursed man, a lost man. Wilson says that the film is a family-friendly blockbuster simply because, in her words, there aren't any sex scenes. And I'm sorry, but what a genuinely strange critique for a woman to make about a film made by a man. Hey, dude, would it kill you to throw some fucking tits and dicks on the screen? I paid $18 and I bought the large popcorn. Can I just see some tits and dicks already? This is a movie where throats are being slit and people are catching arrows to the forehead every 5 minutes. The Cyclops and Circe scenes are pure nightmare fuel. It's rated R for a reason. Calling it family friendly makes me think she may have accidentally watched Percy Jackson and the Olympians instead of the Odyssey. Once again, I have to reiterate that Emily Wilson is allowed to dislike this film. She is more than qualified and more than welcome to share her opinions publicly. It's also not at all uncommon for scholars in a particular field to not enjoy film adaptations of the topics they've spent their lives researching. They're often just too close to the material and have too rigid of expectations to ever be satisfied. And that is fine, but formally publishing this critique with the London Review of Books is just strange to me, because aside from it being a move I would consider rather low character and unnecessarily rude, her critiques also show a strangely poor comprehension of cinema as a storytelling format. She constantly complains that the film is too loud, but shouldn't the Odyssey be loud? Aren't most big budget epic films kind of loud when you see them in a theater? This too loud thing sort of reminds me of that moment in Amadeus when the emperor doesn't know how to critique Mozart's latest piece, so he just says,
well, I mean, occasionally it seems to have, how shall one say? How shall one say directly?
Too many notes, Your Majesty.
Exactly. Very well put. Too many notes.
It's just a guy critiquing an art form he knows nothing about, and he doesn't know how to properly critique it because he doesn't know anything about it, so he's just like, it's too many notes were played. That's what the too loud thing sounds like to me. It's just like, I don't know. The noises were loud. Too loud. A movie should be quiet, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know what movies are.
There are just as many notes, Majesty, as are required, neither more nor less.
Well, my dear fellow, there are, in fact, only so many notes the ear can hear in the course of an evening.
I feel like something that's getting lost in this conversation is everyone is saying Emily Wilson gets to have the definitive say on how the Odyssey should be adapted and written. Her credentials earn her that right. But no one is realizing that Emily Wilson, while being one of the world's go-to authorities on translating ancient Greek literature, doesn't actually know the first fucking thing about making a good movie. She's never made a movie. She has no idea what goes into it. And here's where I'm gonna really piss some of you off. The Odyssey, in its original form, always was way closer to cinema than prose or poetry. It was originally meant to be consumed and experienced as a piece of live performance. It was meant to be seen and heard, not read. While Nolan's film may lack the academic and historic girth and technical accuracy of Wilson's translation, it's ultimately a more fitting tribute to the original soul of the Odyssey than a book ever could be. It's kind of like the difference between reading the lyrics to a great song and watching an artist perform that song live. They're two completely different ways to experience the same piece of art, but I would argue that the second is going to be leaps and bounds more fulfilling and moving every damn time. And if I had to guess, I would say that that's actually what's bothering Emily Wilson. The knowledge that while she may know every little factoid there is to know about the history of the story, she will never possess the skill set to do what Christopher Nolan just did. She can't bring the Odyssey to life the way he can. And however that makes you feel, the fact of the matter is, the Odyssey very much so is a story that is meant to be brought to life. It is meant to be interpreted by bards and actors. It is meant to be a big, bombastic, audiovisual spectacle. It was never intended to be a quiet, reflective, solitary experience. And I even think the evidence of this resentment from Wilson toward Nolan can be seen in her critique. This review is meant to be a scholarly critique, released in a scholarly publication for the sake of academic analysis. And yet, Wilson is constantly making snarky personal jabs at Nolan's work as a filmmaker, denigrating his past work, diminishing his accomplishments in his own field, and going out of her way to just generally rag on the guy. And that all feels incredibly out of place and irrelevant in a piece that is meant to be a bit of highbrow scholarly analysis. It feels more like the kind of thing Regina George would write in the Burn book in Mean Girls. Nolan is a fugly slut, and so on. To sum up this section, I just have to reiterate once more that I am not saying Emily Wilson owes anybody anything. I am not saying she is not allowed to dislike a film. I am not saying that when a man pays a woman a compliment, the woman has to be grateful. I am not saying she is not allowed to publicly share her disapproval. I'm saying she had a choice in how to respond to a moment where a lot of people were interested in her thoughts. And in my subjective opinion, she chose poorly. She chose to respond like a vindictive, petty jerk who struggles to understand even the most basic elements of cinema as a storytelling format. And for those of you with basic media literacy skills, I'm sorry for repeating so many times that my critique of Wilson's behavior has nothing to do with questioning her qualifications or saying that women need to be grateful to men or any other straw men that are no doubt filling my comments as we speak. It's just a lot of people really struggle to understand really clear, really basic language these days. It's almost like there's some kind of literacy crisis or... oh shit. Anyone who tells you that they thought the dialogue in the Odyssey wasn't that good doesn't know what they're talking about. The reason why so many people think that Christopher Nolan's grasp of dialogue is subpar is because we are living through a literacy crisis, and a lot of people actually don't know what good writing sounds like. When Odysseus is explaining what he heard in the siren song to his men, he says, "It was the song of the thing you want most, but most can't have. And the thing you most can't have is the thing you already had, but lost." That's one of the most beautifully poetic lines of dialogue I've heard maybe ever. Give the man a screenwriting Oscar, give him the directing Oscar, give him Best Picture, wrap it up. The fuck are we talking about here? Okay, first things first, bad choice of words on my part. I'm aware I made a short form video that implied that anyone who doesn't enjoy Christopher Nolan's screenwriting is probably functionally illiterate. Naturally, that was going to draw the ire of a lot of people. That's on me. That's also a byproduct of the constraints of short form videos. I could have worded it more specifically or taken more time to inject nuance, but that's what long form videos are for, so here we are. Also, though, for real, why is everyone actually so goddamn stupid about everything all the time? While I get how saying anyone who disagrees with my subjective opinion is an illiterate simpleton is going to piss people off, the responses to that video were just constantly proving my point. What I really mean when I talk about the literacy crisis isn't a complete inability to read and write at an internet level. I mean an inability to make basic inferences about media and to connect really simple dots without having everything carefully spoon-fed to you. In fact, even when the information is spoon-fed, it's still missed. So many people pointed out how stupid it was that I was quoting one single line from a 3-hour movie as evidence that the script was good. But that's obviously not my argument, right? I'm not saying I found this one single line to be particularly haunting and beautiful, therefore everything else gets a pass. I'm saying I think the entire screenplay is really well written, and this one line is an example of one of the many lines that stuck with me. And when I talk about media literacy, I'm talking about the idea that I shouldn't have to explicitly lay that out for people to grasp what I'm saying. Because all the people saying, bro quotes one line from a 3-hour long movie, are basically saying my point is invalid because I didn't take the time to quote the entire 3-hour long screenplay. It's just such a fucking impossibly stupid response. Yeah, obviously, I only quoted one line. It's a 60-second video. I'm just giving you an example of a section that I found particularly moving, and I'm using that section to support the opinion that the writing was overall very strong. The overtly obvious implication is that I liked all 3 hours. I shouldn't have to quote all 3 hours to make that point. It's like if I said I love the production on Robin's 2010 pop masterpiece Body Talk, and I referenced the breakdown on Call Your Girlfriend as an example of a moment where the production really shines and sends me into celestial orbit every time I hear it. And then a bunch of people said, that's one moment on a 15-track album. Yeah, genius! I'm not gonna fucking sing the entire fucking album for you. My stance is that I think the whole album is good, just like I think the whole movie is good. I'm not saying the whole movie is good because of this one good line. Any person with halfway decent media comprehension would get that. It's so brain-rottingly depressing how many people wrote this comment and didn't realize how stupid they sounded for writing it. And again, I said this earlier, but all of those same people who said one line is not proof that an entire screenplay is well written were saying that the entire movie sucks because the word dad was included. Take a look at this post. I really think this person is being serious. They are actually asking if the word dad was invented back then. What the fuck does that even mean? Do you mean the concept of the word dad? The concept of a dad at all? Or just the actual word D-A-D, dad? Because if it's the last one, then no, that word had not been invented yet, but neither had the word father. English didn't exist yet.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
The fact that I'm saying people not liking this film is evidence of a literacy crisis, and people are responding by saying, yeah, but why is Spider-Man saying dad in the trailer is so... I don't even know if I can possibly overstate how frustratingly stupid that is. Oh, and by the way, Emily Wilson agrees with me on this. She hates the movie for a lot of weird reasons, but the language is not one of them. She is on record saying that there is absolutely nothing wrong from a scholarly or academic perspective with doing a modern adaptation of an ancient Greek text where people speak in modern language and in American English accents. So if your reason for hating the film is that they used the word dad and they spoke in accents you don't like, Emily Wilson disagrees with you. A lot of people also tried to clown on me by saying that the line I was quoting isn't even well written, pointing out that it's clumsily worded and sounds like high school level poetry. Again, this is just more evidence of a lack in basic literacy. What they're bumping up against is the phrase, the thing you most can't have. That's not a very natural or normal phrase. It's not how you would expect someone to say what Odysseus is trying to say. But the fact that the phrase stands out to your ear is a feature, not a bug. It's the preciseness and the peculiarity of the phrasing that makes it stick in your mind. And when I actually asked people, how would you have written it better? Their answers were, again, either non-existent or laughably ridiculous. Nolan is constantly trying to find the most succinct and direct way of communicating his film's ideas. He doesn't want to speak over anyone's head. He wants to use very plain language and get straight to the point because he wants his characters to be understood. So even in his most poetic moments, he is choosing the simplest possible language to get the ideas across. You know what? Let's actually take a moment and diagram what is actually being said there. Odysseus is communicating the pain of loss, the pain of longing, the pain of impermanence, and the transient nature of life. He's saying that the song was about the thing you want most in the world, not just a thing you really want, the thing that out of all the things you want, this is the one thing you crave more than any other. I had someone in the comments tell me that the use of the word thing was lowbrow and lazy, but is there a better word? I'm genuinely asking, is there a more inclusive word, a more simple and specific word, while also being broad enough to incorporate each listener's subjective experience?
Also, the idea that simple words can't be inherently poetic or profound is really stupid and betrays an ignorance of the history of literature. To be or not to be. All monosyllabic words, the longest word in that sentence is the word not. The word be is the operative word. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting because it can be a lot of different things. It's doing the same job as the word thing in that line. So thing can be anything. It can be a person that you lost. It can be a time period of your life you want to return to. It can be a place. It can be a pet. It can be a friend. It can be a moment in time, a memory. Be is the same way. He could have written to live or not to live, to kill or not to kill, to carry out a plan or not to carry out a plan. Be is specific enough and also broad enough that it can encapsulate all of that stuff, you fucking idiots.
There are maybe more flowery words he could have chosen, more showy words, but performative showiness is not the goal. The goal is to be understood. So we've got a song of the thing we want most, and next Odysseus has to communicate the idea that he can't have the thing he wants most. But it's not just that he can't have it. Of all the things he can't have, this is the thing most out of reach, the thing he is most prohibited from obtaining, the thing he most can't have. And when you break it down, there really is no better or more succinct way to put it than that. Of all the things you can't have, this is the thing you most can't have. Now to the reason why. The reason why you most can't have this thing is because you already had it and you lost it in a way that is irretrievable. And that explains everything. It explains why it's the thing you want more than any other thing, and also why it's the thing furthest from your grasp. Poetry does not need to be inherently complex and elevated to be good. The words don't need to be multisyllabic, rare words drawn from a thesaurus and selected for their aesthetic beauty. Sometimes the simplest truths, spoken in the simplest ways, are the most poetic and lasting. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. With great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, baby. Swing. The simplicity is the point. The poetry emerges from the monosyllabic economic use of small, simple, clear, everyday words. But people are stupid, really fucking stupid. So stupid that they think someone speaking plainly is actually bad at speaking if they aren't using bigger words. Words that those same people would no doubt struggle to comprehend anyway if they heard them.
Too many notes, Your Majesty.
Exactly. Very well put. Too many notes.
And that's another aspect of our cultural failure in media comprehension and literacy. It just turns everyone into a fuck-ass hater. Part of the reason why what I'm doing right now turns so many people off is because I'm using my energy to praise a piece of well-executed, emotionally resonant, and intelligent art instead of tearing it down. And that's just not how the internet likes to roll. We are much more comfortable talking about why something sucks than we are trying to explain why something works and is beautiful. It is intellectually so much easier to just say something you struggled to understand is bad and dismiss it outright than it is to try to connect and comprehend the gap between your expectations and the artist's execution. And the literacy crisis really drives me nuts as a satirist because nobody knows how to detect comedic hyperbole anymore when they see it, and it's such a bummer, dude. I wrote this post where I said that every time Elliot Page appeared on screen, my entire theater experienced simultaneous gender fluid orgasms, and someone would stand up in the audience and declare, "I am now trans" about this, to which the entire audience would all unanimously applaud. And people in the comments thought I was being serious. Somehow. They said, "See, this is why I don't go to the movies anymore. That would have been so annoying." You don't go to the movie theater because you think entire crowds of people are enjoying simultaneous gender fluid orgasms and proudly announcing they are trans in the middle of the film? How can I possibly make it more obvious that this is not an actual thing that has ever happened or would ever happen? A few weeks back, I wrote a meme post about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding where I joked that during the ceremony, Tay-Tay sprouted horns and started reciting incantations over the altar in Aramaic, and somebody in the comments asked me for a fucking source. What? A source? Listen, I don't think there's really a question about whether or not we have a problem where the majority of people are struggling with basic literacy and comprehension. I think the evidence of the world we find ourselves in, where 3,200 years after the Odyssey, most people still believe in the literal existence of interventionalist gods, speaks for itself. I mean, shit, guys, it just came out that Anthropic is buying hundreds of thousands of books, some that are very old and very rare, and completely destroying them so that they can just feed them into their servers and keep them digitally stored in the brain of their AI. We are an incredibly stupid bunch of apes. So I think the question isn't, is there a literacy crisis? The more interesting question to me is the literacy crisis even new? Or have we just always been this way? And that's what I think is actually going on here. I think as long as written history has existed, there have been scholars and common folk, pastors, philosophers, artists, and audiences disagreeing over the meaning of things. What does the Bible mean? What is the message of these stories? What does the Quran mean? What message did Homer wish to communicate through the ages with his epic poetry? Why did Vincent van Gogh paint like that? And I'm not immune to this. I'm just as guilty of thinking I get it when everyone else doesn't as the next guy. And maybe that's our problem. That's the reason for the disconnect. That's the reason we keep hurting each other and fighting about every single goddamn thing, no matter how big or how small. The reason why we never seem to be able to grow or evolve or heal. Maybe our problem is simply that we all think we understand, and none of us actually do. And I think that's the end of the video. Okay, thanks for watching. That was fun, right? Everyone had fun? Patreon.com/AustinArcher. It's $1 a month. Shout out to all the Patreon patrons. All of my content goes there early with extended content. There's exclusive content that I post regularly over there that you don't see anywhere else. Again, it's $1. You can support the work I do here really easily. You can also just like, share, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really helps. My music is over on austinarchermusic.bandcamp.com. That's all linked in the description. And I have lots of music, and I have a new album coming out soon. Maybe by the time you're watching this, it might be out, and you can go check it out. Shout out to everybody who helped me crowdfund for that. That really helped. Okay, I'll see you. I'll see you whenever I happen to see you next. Okay, thank you. And hey, stop. You're still writing the comments about the Emily Wilson thing. You're still saying a woman should be allowed to have an opinion and not have to say thank you to a man. And I didn't say she has to. So stop. Did you not hear me say that? Did I not say it enough times? Everybody heard me say that, right? Right?